Well, week 5 of the college football season is here. Auburn opened SEC play with the loss at Texas A&M. And Cole, you had a lot to say going into this game. A lot of that came to be true last Saturday. We will break down how the Tigers fared in College Station. Also look ahead to the Deep South's oldest rivalry as the back-to-back national champs come to the Plains, Georgia, and head coach Kirby Smart. We'll have all of that right here. Let's go head-to-head. All right, guys, welcome in Cole Kublik, Simone Eli. We want to thank our sponsor, the Alabama Cattlemen's Association. Cole, there's not, like you said a minute ago, there's not a ton to be excited about right now coming off of this loss at Texas A&M for Auburn. When you think about the loss as a whole, what was maybe the most frustrating part that you saw out there on the field?
I don't think there's any doubt that it's quarterback not being able to get the football out of his hands. And that was mainly Peyton Thorne. But you saw it even a little bit with Robbie Ashford, and then some of the receivers that were open that were missed when they decided to throw the football. That consistency from that position is just absent. It's not there, and the performance really hasn't been there either. So we saw a little bit of Holden Garner. Maybe he's a guy that gets a look down the road. I think they want to try to stick with Peyton Thorne. I think if he can operate it the way it needs to be, he still gives them the best chance to win based on his abilities, but if he can't get the football out of his hands, Simone, there's really no point in him being in the game. And I think that's a little bit of fear of making a mistake, maybe seeing some things that aren't necessarily what you believe them to be or thought they were going to be pre-snap. And the protection obviously wasn't there either. So that's got to be a part of it. Your eyes coming down, worried about getting hit. I mean, 15 tackles for a loss in a college football game is just unacceptable. It should never happen. 7 sacks should never take place. The offensive line didn't play well. The receivers, you've heard Coach Freeze reference a couple of times this week, didn't run routes necessarily the way that they needed to, even though they were open at times. I thought the running backs played hard, played well. They found space and were able to make a few things happen at different points in time. But there's not a lot to really feel good about, comfortable about, not only leaving that A&M game, but going into the Georgia game as well.
Yeah, from somebody who was just watching the game, you get frustrated with the quarterback. You wonder, okay, does he have enough time in the pocket or not? From somebody who actually knows the game, all right, somebody who's actually played the game yourself, is there a key point, a key position group to point to? Is this primarily on the quarterback? Is this primarily on the protection? Because you said going into the Texas A&M game, they're going to be outmatched up front. I was thinking about that the entire game because, wow, it just seemed like every other play was someone getting sacked or a tackle for loss. I mean, it's just so frustrating to an extent. Where does the blame fall?
I think it's collective, and I think it's easy to look at quarterbacks and say holding onto the football, missing open receivers. Very difficult for even me to watch and say, oh, that receiver didn't run the route the way that he meant to or was supposed to. He broke that off too early. Or there's runoff routes where you're looking to just take some of the coverage away from a different route to clear space and allow him to be open. You don't really know necessarily if those are run correctly a lot of the times. It's easy to see the protections breaking down, and that Shamar Turner and Fadil Diggs and McKinley Jackson are all getting into the backfield. We can tell that. And there were a couple with tight ends and running backs where the protection wasn't as clean as it needed to be from them. So I'm not going to point to one position group because it can all be better. It can all improve, and it can all go out and execute on a more consistent basis. And that's going to help any play, no matter if it's a deep shot and you need a lot of time, or if it's a quick crosser, or if it's a toss sweep. Collectively, I think the entire group has to perform better, and the coaching staff has to go back to the drawing board a little bit and find things that they're comfortable with and can find ways to get whoever is playing quarterback comfortable and confident to where they can go out and complete some passes and be a little bit multidimensional. The fact that they're second in the SEC in rushing is a little bit astonishing because they don't consistently feel like they just go out and do that. But, you're also the bottom in pass yards per game. So you got to find a way to balance some things out a little bit more.
Before we talk about Georgia, let's talk about this Auburn defense because they hung tough for a while there in the game. They forced a turnover, of course, the touchdown. Jimbo couldn't make the tackle, but how impressed were you by this Auburn defense again this week? I feel like in moments, I mean, they just have some guys that just are flat out playing ball.
There are parts of it that have been fantastic, but it's, as we discussed, I think the last 2 weeks, it's only parts of it at times. Collectively, it doesn't feel like it fits together the majority of the time. Now, I do think that guys are playing hard. I do think the majority of the guys are flying to the football. You can win a lot on defense with just alignment, assignment, and effort. And they're getting a lot of those. But you're dealing with a lot of injuries on the back end as well. So that's obviously going to make things a little bit complicated as far as what you can actually call, what you can adjust, who's communicating what. The defensive line, I think, on the edges was a little bit better, but still inside, outside of maybe one guy, you don't consistently see a push. You don't see a consistent pass rush, being able to win one-on-ones. You know, like I've talked about, some of the defensive tackles getting displaced from their gaps. That can't continue. And it got a little bit worse as this game progressed. Obviously, they were on the field a lot, and that doesn't make it much easier.
For sure. You can listen to Cole, of course, on WJOX in Birmingham, the ESPN and SEC network, and your new podcast, or the podcast that you have been doing for a while now, Cube Show, where you break down football every single Sunday. We look forward to that and hearing your analysis. Let's talk about the Deep South's oldest rivalry, Cole, because Hugh Freeze was asked about it, and I was a little bit surprised by his response. I mean, I think it's also a little bit of like, okay, I am new to Auburn, and I do appreciate his innocence, maybe, if that's the word. I don't know, where he said, like, I don't know how much there is not, it doesn't really feel like there's a lot of hatred in this rivalry. I'm not sure how it stacks up against other rivalries I've been a part of. I seem to think, and I didn't play at Auburn, but just from covering this game for the last several years, that this is a strong rivalry, and there is a lot of bad blood because the recruiting is such a big part of this rivalry. How do you feel as a former player? How did you feel when you played? How does this stack up against maybe the Iron Bowl?
Yeah, this was a massive game for us when I played, because I would say easily 35% of our roster was from the state of Georgia. Guys like Takeo Spikes and Carson Bailey and Ben Leard and Antoine Nolan. Ronnie Brown would come in. He was from Georgia. Yeah. So we had so many guys from the state of Georgia that this was their Iron Bowl, so to speak. And we kind of knew, hey, we want to get this one for them. And then they knew coming back the following week, us guys from Alabama, they wanted to help us get that one, or 2 weeks later. But I do think that there's vitriol. I do think that there's hate. But Coach Freeze, it's not, I don't feel like it's his job to understand the exact temperature of that. Sure. I could care less if he knows what year Kirby Smart won what amount of games. I'd rather him focus on Auburn football. I know people had fun with that. That doesn't bother me. I didn't laugh at it. I was just kind of like, okay, on to the next thing. Like it was just a nothing to me. But I do think he understands how much it means in general, and just the fact that this is the team that, number one, is the standard in college football right now. You have an opportunity to go do something great. And then on top of that, because, I mean, this goes way back. I mean, this is the Deep South's oldest rivalry, like he said. We know where Pat Dye played football in college. We know where Vince Dooley played football in college. We know, like you mentioned, in recruiting, how close that state line is to the universities. And that and Kirby's done a great job actually finally recruiting the state of Alabama well, which had not been done, it felt like, in the history of that program. Yeah. And now he's bringing in multiple high-profile recruits there to the state of Georgia, or to that program. So it's a big one. We hated them. We had a lot of success against them, and there's not a lot of love lost now. I respect the heck out of them as a program now that I'm an analyst, but as a player, it was one that you definitely wanted to get for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. And Georgia, known for their defense. I mean, Kirby Smart, obviously a defensive guy, but they've been impressive offensively as well. Carson Beck throwing for 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns. How impressed have you been by this Bulldogs offense throughout the season?
A new offensive coordinator, new quarterback. So Mike Bobo took over, Carson Beck, new quarterback, and he's been great. Some people have been a little bit disappointed with the numbers. I don't really see that. I don't understand that. First 300-yard game last week. Yeah. And he's just, to me, he goes out there and he executes the offense. I think that's a great thing. Some people, I guess that's not enough. They don't like that. They're a little dinged up at running back, but Dejuan Edwards comes back. He's been good since he returned to the lineup. They've got Dylan Bell, wide receiver, that they put in the backfield. He's a little bit more speedy and has a little bit more wiggle, but not going to be a guy I think that you lean on for 25, 35 carries a game. Big physical offensive line, weapons all over the place. Arian Smith came through with a big touchdown catch last week. We know Brock Bowers is arguably the best player in college football, not offense, defense, not tight end. Like, he could legitimately make a case for the best player in college football. Yeah. You go get a slot receiver from Missouri and Dominic Lovett. They just have guys all over the place. And it's just, they don't have to lean on one individual player to be able to go out there and be successful on offense. And I think they've just grown throughout the course of this season. Not a ton of tests on that schedule. South Carolina was able to push him a little bit, but South Carolina has a quarterback playing out of his mind right now. I think you could also argue that Spencer Rattler playing at a higher level than any other quarterback in the SEC. And I know exactly what Jaden Daniels is doing in Baton Rouge right now, but go look at those two rosters. One's throwing to Luke Doty and handing off to Dakereon Joyner, two former quarterbacks. Another one's throwing to, three NFL receivers. It's a little bit different.
No doubt about that. When you look at the team defensively, I mean, Georgia is a 14.5-point favorite right now on the road in Jordan-Hare Stadium. How do you feel about this team defensively? I've looked at, I don't know, I think they're giving up maybe 10 points a game. I know they kept guys under double digits as well. Are you impressed by this unit like maybe that you have been by Georgia teams in years past?
Not up front the way that I have been the last 3-4 years. They're not quite that. However, they have guys that can be a problem. Nazir Stackhouse has been playing a lot of football there. Warren Brinson is in his senior season. Big 97 is going to be someone who can hurt you inside. Marvin Jones is a young edge defender, number 7. You'll see him. He looks like he should be like a Darnell Washington type tight end. He's playing outside linebacker, and he goes off in coverage and rushes the passer. Michael Williams can rush the passer off the edge. It's Jason Dumas-Johnson, one of the best linebackers in college football, but the secondary is where they're extremely strong. And they were a little dinged up there a little bit early in the season. Javon Bullard was a little bit nicked. He's back in the lineup. He can cover the slot. He can go out and play corner. He comes down and plays the run well. Tyke Smith, the West Virginia transfer, who we thought was going to be great 2 years ago, has really finally come on this year and is making an impact. So there are not a lot of holes. I think they'll probably lean on the secondary as the actual strength a little bit more this year, as opposed to the last 2 years. It was the front, the defensive line, and what they were able to do, especially in the middle of those defenses. I think the linebackers are maybe a little more active or as active, and then that secondary probably collectively a little bit better. So it's going to be tough sledding for the Auburn offense either way.
Yeah, I'm not trying to pump you up, but every week I'm somewhat impressed, or very impressed rather, by how many guys on these teams, not just like the starters either, like 2 and 3 deep. It's kind of crazy, but of course that's part of your job with SEC and ESPN. Cole, where will you be this Saturday?
I will be in Knoxville, Tennessee, a bit of a revenge game for the Vols. South Carolina kind of ruined that dream season for them last year. Mm-hmm. That's when Spencer Rattler, I think, kind of the switch went off, and he started playing really good football. 6 touchdown passes in that game last year. Yeah. Neyland's going to be nuts. I'm excited to be inside of it, be in that environment. I think Spencer's playing excellent football right now. They seem to have a running back that they have found in Mario Anderson. The D3 transfer, offensive line, played a little bit better last week. Tennessee's got Joe Milton, who has more maybe God-given ability than any quarterback on planet Earth, and a group of receivers that are super talented, defensive line playing pretty good ball. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited about that one.
No doubt. Looking forward to it as well. All right, prediction time. Cole, want to get your thoughts on how things will look at Jordan-Hare Stadium when they hit 000s on Saturday.
Yeah, I think offensively it's going to be really tough for this Auburn football team. Simone, like we talked about, the offensive line's just been inconsistent, have not been running the football well. But the backs are playing well. I would anticipate more ways to try to get the football into the hands of the Auburn running backs quickly. And that's not just handing it off or pitching it to them. Use them out of the backfield, probably some more motion, maybe some jet orbit motions where you can get them the football quickly. Just quick distribution to the backs and let them go make plays. Yeah. There's got to be some consistency at quarterback. I'm fine using 2 situationally, but you and I talked about rotationally earlier in the year, how it's just never really going to be able to work the way that you want it to. And this Georgia defense is fantastic. Defensively, I do think Auburn can be somewhat problematic. The offensive line for Georgia has struggled with movement, so maybe anticipate a little bit more of that. But individually, there are going to be some matchups that do favor Georgia. There is no matchup that favors you when you're going against Brock Bowers. Like, there's no guy you put on him. You can't bracket him. They can get him the football too many ways, and they're lining him up in the backfield, motioning him around. So I think probably 35-14 is what I look at the score here. I think Georgia's in control of this game. I know home field advantage will be big. Auburn has got to get off to a good start. They need a positive start to get the crowd into it, to keep the crowd into it, and probably just to build some confidence within themselves, Simone, to make them believe that they can be a team that competes in this game for 4 quarters. But when you look at the matchups, the position groups, the schemes, it's just I find it hard to see a ton of success for Auburn in this football game. Yeah,
I'm right there with you. I have 31-10 Georgia. I mean, I feel like we could maybe see another defensive touchdown, but the concerns with 15 tackles for loss and 7 sacks at Texas A&M, and now you have a defense that's more talented than the Aggies. You have concerns there And we will see, week to week, you never know what's going to change. Like you said off the show, I mean, Holden Geriner, is he going to get more time? We will see. Hugh Freeze certainly trying to figure it out. And he made it a point to say that it doesn't all fall on the quarterbacks. And I think that anybody that watches football can see that. I mean, there's a lot of blame to go around. But we will see. It's a 2:30 kickoff, the SEC on CBS Game of the Week. The Deep South's oldest rivalry in Jordan-Hare Stadium. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. For Cole Kublick, I'm Simone Eli. We will see you next week.
Brought to you by Alabama Beef Farmers and Ranchers.